on the first of 2 pace laps that will take them before the start of this 100-minute race, 1 hour and 40 minutes for the IMSA Prototype Challenge. And there will be a mandatory pit stop to change the drivers halfway through this event. And that pit stop, when they change the drivers, the minimum pit stop time from pit in to pit out is 115 seconds. The reason for that is that they do not want the teams spending huge amounts of money on hiring extra pit crew and making super fast service. Just plenty of time for the drivers to make the driver change and then get on with the race. They can do anything else they want to as well. But if you're refueling the car, they will need to refuel once during this race. During that refueling process, it'll be a minimum pit stop time of 115 seconds. We've got 10 cars in this race then. It's starting at the back, it's car number 46. That's the CT Motorsports Duquesne, driven by Steve Scullen. In the 9th position on the grid, George Stakos from Canada for Arve Motorsports with GRS. That's another Ligier JSP 320, car number 61. Row 4 on the outside, Lance Willsey, car number 14 for Sean Creech Motorsport. There's 2 Ligiers on this row. Alongside of the US Racetronics, Brian Thelis in car number 77. Row 3 on the outside from Canada, Anthony Mantella for AWA, a Duquesne D08 in car number 17. Alongside Ari Baylog in car number 3. That's the Junior 3 Racing Ligier JS 320. On row 2 of the grid, 1 Duquesne, 1 Ligier. First of all, the JDC Motorsports Duquesne, car number 40 of Keith Grant, who's driving solo this weekend without the usual help from his brother David. Alongside him, 3rd on the grid, Tony Arve in car number 44 for Arve Motorsports with GRS, a Ligier JSP 320. Onto the front row of the grid, Memo Gidley will start car number 23. That's the JDC Motorsports Duquesne D08, and on the pole position. First time in this series, but a massively experienced driver, and he leads the championship coming into this weekend for Wolver Racing in a Ligier, a new track record of 1 minute 12.745 in qualifying for car number 60. That'll be Tony's Kazimet starting on the pole position. Had 2 races already this season. Each of the front row cars have won one of those races each. Tony's Kazimet's won the opening round of the season at Daytona, along with his then regular co-driver Bruce Hamilton, who retired after that win. And then last time out it was Memo Gidley and Alexander Kariba who won at the 2nd round earlier this year. Coming up for the green flag waves. Away we go, absolutely side by side, heading down into turn 1. On the inside is Tony's Kazimet, taking into 2nd place Memo Gidley, and right behind him another veteran driver there, Tony Arve in 3rd position. They head over the hill, over the crest at turn 2, and around on this first lap of the race. Nice start there for Tony's Kazimet. Massively experienced. He's driven just about everything over the years, had a lot of success in all sorts of different cars. Generally speaking, he also works as a driver coach, a very accomplished driver coach, works on the road to Indy with a bunch of different drivers, primarily for Pabst Racing. His drivers scored several podiums this weekend at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, of course, of their racing endeavors. But at the moment, it's Tony's Kazimet who leads the race. Memo Gidley in 2nd position. Under pressure now from Tony Arve is Keith Grant, making a move in that yellow Duquesne, car number 40. Started in the 4th position. He looks like he's moved past into the 3rd place on this first lap. Nancy Mantella following him through as well. Problem then for Tony Arve.
Tony's Kazimet's out in front. Great run from the pole, Jeremy, and it was a very windy when they ran qualifying this morning. That wind has settled down, and it was a tailwind going into turn 2 and a headwind down the front straightaway. So a real handful when they were out there this morning with that wind.
Yeah, there'll be, other than that, it's picture-perfect conditions here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park this weekend. It's not too hot. It's barely a cloud in the sky at the moment, and perfect conditions for racing.
Mantella in the 17 trying to get his way forward, moving forward. You see the number 3.
Good start indeed for Anthony Mantella from Toronto, Canada. So home race for Anthony Mantella in car number 17. That's the AWA Duquesne in now that 4th position, trying to track down Keith Grant ahead of him. Behind him is Tony Arbe. So maybe a mistake on coming out of Moss hairpin last time around on that first lap for Tony Arbe. Dropped him from 3rd to the 5th position, Brian. First 2 remaining. Well, actually, Tony Kazimierz pulled away quite extensively from Memo Gidley on that last lap, set the best lap of the race. 1:14.425 for Tony Kazimierz on the first flying lap. First lap being a rolling start. First flying lap 1:14. The lap record was set by Garrett Grist back in 2019, the last time these cars were here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. COVID. Been no races here for the IMSA series in either 2020 or 21. The old record of 1:13.8. Kazimierz already down to a 1:14.5, pulling away on this first lap in that Volvo Racing Ligier.
Kazimierz down the back straightaway into turn 8, and I talked to him before the race. He said, I think we have a good car over the long run. We'll just have to wait and see. But think about this, Ligier in first right now, then Memo Gidley aboard the Duquesne chassis, and each one of them have a little different signature down that long straightaway. That could come into play in the latter stages of this race, Jeremy. You want to get that pass done if you can in the straighter sections of the racetrack. Makes it a lot easier.
It certainly does, and this is the best battle of the race right now is for 3rd position on back. 4th position on back with Anthony Mantella just ahead of Tony Arbe, Brian Thenis hanging in there, and Barry Balog as well.
Tony Arbe going to have to go it alone this weekend. Dylan McIvern was slated to be alongside Arbe aboard the 44, but in a big crash in Michelin Pilot Challenge qualifying on Friday, not only did it destroy the car, also some damage to McIvern's ribs. He said to Tony Arbe, I can't even get in the car, much less drive it for you. So Tony Arbe is going to have to do
that crash for Dylan McIvern prevented him from starting that race, and which was a huge disappointment, of course, not only for him but also Bill Oberlin. He and Bill Oberlin had won the previous round of the Michelin Pilot Challenge race in their Turner Motorsport BMW at Kings Glen 1 week ago. Got himself back in the championship reckoning there, but that crash, the car unable to be repaired yesterday, so did not take part in the race. So falling along, we're back in the point standings now, and Dylan McIvern, we hope those ribs are nasty. That's a nasty injury. I've had some broken ribs in the past as well. It's not a lot of fun. So hopefully they're not broken, and that we'll be back in the cockpit soon.
I can't imagine bouncing around this racetrack with a rib injury. See the 17 of Mantella followed by Arbe, and then Brian Thenis. Thenis will hand that car over to Patrick Kuyala, who is very, very quick indeed. Thenis doing a good job here this weekend, looking to hand that over on the pit stop, like I said, to Patrick Kuyala, who is always, always quick in anything that he drives, Jeremy.
Yeah, he is, and he's Finnish, from Finland, although he's born actually in Spain, lived in different cities in Europe for most of his life, but we had a good chat to him last weekend. We was racing in the Lamborghini event at Watkins Glen, and moved now back to Finland, been there for the last 6 years, lives out in the countryside and absolutely loves it. At the moment, it is Brian Thenis driving that car, Brian, from Huntington Beach in California. Again, lots of experience as well for Thenis.
Interesting to see Tony Arbe slipping back a little bit at the start. I don't know if he had a problem, Jeremy, but now really beginning to charge again, putting the pressure on Anthony Mantella. Mantella from nearby in Toronto, and so this is his home track, knows it well, but Ave uses his experience and just slips by in between turns 2 and 3.
Yeah, finally gets that pass made. I'm not sure whether he slipped wide maybe at Moss Hairpin on that first lap. It costed those couple of positions for Tony Ave in that very distinctive orange, white and blue car. But he's beginning to work his way forward now. So back up into the 4th position, but he's got quite a lot of deficit to make up if he's going to catch those guys in front of him. Tony's Kazimit's pulled out nearly 4 seconds over Memo Gidley in the first 5 laps of this race. A 3-second margin back from Memo Gidley to Keith Grant in 3rd, and a similar margin back to Anthony Mantella.
So Mantella has his rearview mirrors full of the red, white, and blue. Number 77 of Brian Thenis now as Tony Ave once by, beginning to separate himself, trying to charge back down, see if he can catch Keith Grant in front. Normally runs with his brother David Grant, but David not here this weekend, so Keith going it alone. Kazimit's, we talked about, he'll do this by himself. He's run all season long with the exception of the first race by himself, then Memo Gidley sharing with Alexander Karibe. Karibe, his first visit to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and Jeremy, I spoke with him this morning and his eyes were wide open. He said, I love this place, but wow, the commitment level and the compression as we see right now, Mantella and Thenis through that compression at turn 4. He said it's just absolutely amazing. Not only do you hit the compression there at the apex, then you jump on the brakes and it just drives you into the racetrack because it's then uphill into the braking zone for turn 5. Brutal, really, really physical around this racetrack and prototype.
These cars have a lot of downforce, don't they? And they really are sort of dragged down into the road by the aerodynamic forces on this car, both from the wings that you can see on the car front and rear, but also the underbody as well. It just sucks the car down on the road, and this is a pretty grippy race surface. We've resurfaced parts of this racetrack over the last several years, and it was already fast. It's now even faster. It becomes a real physical challenge as well for the drivers.
Yeah, over the last 2 years, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park went through a complete repave. It was in a couple of different phases, and you can see the different asphalt in the different areas of the racetrack, a little higher load asphalt in those areas of the apexes. Like I said, the entire racetrack redone over a 2-year period, and it has made it extremely fast. Not that it was not fast before, and that speed just brings the commitment level up, especially when you're driving an aerodynamic machine like a prototype around here. You have to believe that it's going to stick in turn 1, and to some extent, the more speed you carry, the better it's going to stick. Now, obviously, eventually you run on the opposite side of that curve, you get in trouble. But watching these cars in qualifying, 3 or 4 laps in, once the Michelin tires were up to temperature and pressure, several of these drivers able to get at least to the apex in turn 1 flat before a slight breathe off the throttle.
You're right about, yeah, the more speed, the faster you go, the more downforce you get, and the more grip you have. I will remember back at the Milwaukee Mile back in the 80s, watching an IndyCar race there in the 90s, and the Penske team through turn 1 at turn 1 and 2 Milwaukee on that flat mile. Rick Mears was, I think, 17 miles an hour faster through turn 1 than Emerson Fittipaldi, no doubt.
Oh wow!
And it was all down to commitment. With those cars like these, the faster you go, the more downforce you create, and the more speed you can carry again through the corner. It's kind of exponential, and that was just an amazing, to me at the time, revelation about the faster you go, the faster still you can go. And it was an eye-opener for Emerson Fittipaldi. I mean, by the time the race came out, he'd figured it out, of course, but man, that was a really interesting time. But these cars are fast, no doubt about it. Last time around, a new fastest lap each of the last 2 laps of the race by our race leader, Tony Kazimit's 1:14.0 last time around, so within a couple of tenths of Garrett Grist's lap record, despite the fact he has no pressure from behind.
Brian Till, Jeremy Shaw with you. Round 3 of the 2022 IMSA Prototype Challenge from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Championship points leader Tony Kazmets leads on the racetrack as well. Victory at Daytona. Second place at Mid-Ohio has him atop of the championship standings in front of Alexander Kariba and Memo Gidley there in second, just about 120 points back. So that's just a few positions different. Ave in there, the championship as well, and trying to work his way back up after the problems that he had in the opening laps. It goes Kazimets at the top, Kariba and Gidley in second in the championship, then Brian Thenis, Patrick Kiala in third, Ari Balog, Courtney Crone in fifth as we came here to Canada. Great to see IMSA competition back here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, the first time since 2019. So a long layoff because of the COVID pandemic, but great to be back here on a holiday weekend, and the crowd has turned out in droves. Tony Kazimets having it his way right now.
He is way out in front and pulling away the last couple of laps. He's been 3/4 of a second a lap quicker than Memo Gidley. Memo's only been here once before. That was in a, I think it was a McLaren he was driving as part of the TKO team a few years ago. So it's been a while for Memo, and certainly hasn't driven a car with this sort of downforce here at this racetrack previously.
And interesting to watch the two different lines that Tony Kazimets and Memo Gidley, I should say, drive. I was talking to Memo about that, especially you'll see it in turn one. Gidley with a slightly shallower, slightly earlier turn in. Kazimets a little later and kind of rounds that corner off in the ladder going. But it's interesting to stand in qualifying and watch those two through there and then look at the lap times and see that they were almost identical. So just about a couple of tenths difference, and now a problem again for Tony Ave. Had the problem early on, and now a problem up in turn 5, trying to get the 44 righted and back in race direction.
Yeah, and he slipped back on that last lap, had Ave. Let's have a look, see what it... We just lost... Oh, well, wait a minute, is that George Stakos? No, it isn't, is it?
No, it's the 44.
Yeah. Thanks. That was... and then does a spin turn, which doesn't exactly work out either. So double whammy there for Tony Ave. That's a rare miscue for Tony.
And he'll be frustrated. He's a champion in multiple different type cars and driven everything from Atlantic cars to stock cars to sprint cars and a world champion snowmobiler to boot. So he'll get back at it and focus forward. And right now, the 40, the bright yellow 40 at Keith Grant, holding down the final podium spot, but still a long way to go here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Grant beginning to come under pressure from Anthony Mantella from behind, and then Brian Thenis still right there with Mantella. So Grant in that bright yellow 40, and then Mantella and the black and green number 17, and Thenis in the red, white, and blue, and Ave is around again, and I think that's turn 5 again.
Yeah, I think he must be having some braking issues with that car. Let's have a look again. Just a bit too much rear brake there, it looked like, Brian, didn't it? The back end just snapped around on him as he was about to turn into the second part of that right-hander at Moss Corner.
Well, and that camera angle doesn't give it real justice as to how difficult that corner is, Jeremy. You know it. You've driven through it before. Uphill into the braking zone and right about the apex, just as you go past the first apex of 5A, it plateaus. So if you carry too much speed over the top and you're still on the brake heavily, you've got the weight on the nose, the rear end gets light over the crest of the hill, and around you go. We saw that in qualifying in WeatherTech. A couple of the drivers have a problem in the exact same area trying to roll speed through that first apex at 5A, and just a mile an hour too much and the rear end will step out on you for sure, and at best it'll ruin your lap, and at worst it turns you around.
Yeah, he's rejoined. He's I think he's still on the lead lap is Tony Ave, but right at the tail of it now. And I think Steve Scullin has already been lapped by our race leader, Tony Kazimets, continuing to pull away at the front of this field. Now over 6 seconds to get back to Memo Gidley, and Keith Grant in third position, almost 10 seconds further back as well.
Talked to Steve Scullin before the race today, and he said, man, this racetrack, wow, it is eye-opening. His first time here. They also had a gearbox issue that they had to work on, so not sure if they made it out for the start or had to start from pit lane, but a little bit of a wounded Duquesne chassis they were driving with that gearbox issue, but they got it out on track. That's what's important. He'll hand over to Danny Vermael. Vermael helping Scullin as his instructor, his driver coach. And for a lot of these guys, that's the beauty of this series. You're able to have your driver coach ride along with you, so to speak, on the weekend. They can drive the car, help you set it up, and then hopefully take it to the front when they get in for the final stint.
Yeah, Steve Scullin, I think, did start with the rest of the field, but here he is being lapped now by that group contesting third position. We've got 3 cars in that train, the fourth one not too far behind, so it's Keith Grant, Anthony Mantella, and Brian Thenis in nose to tail, and Ari Balog doing his best to hang on behind them as well. Steve Scullin gets out of the way, lets them go through cleanly. So he did at least start the race, so but whether those problems are continuing, not sure at this stage.
At the top of that shot, you can see Ari Balog in the white and blue number 3 beginning to kind of close down on this group that's in front of him. Speaking to Ari this morning as well, and he said, man, I just love this racetrack. I've been here probably 7 or 8 times, and the prototype around here, you know, you take one of these LMP3 cars to other racetracks, and they're just such great cars. They're easy to drive. They just give you confidence. They make you feel comfortable. And then he laughed. He goes, but there's nothing comfortable around Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. He said, you know, you are at it the whole time. It's hard work every corner, and hard work up into turn 5. And as now Balog slips wide, and the same thing, he opened his hands and went off the backside. It's the same problem that Tony Abe had. Abe trying to roll the speed through. Ari Balog just gave up on it a little bit earlier, straightened his hands, drove off the backside of the curb, kept the car headed straight. And as I said, you make that mistake up in turn 5, at worst, you're going to, or at best, you're going to throw away the lap. At worst, you're going to spin.
Yeah, so no harm, no foul. He lost that position, certainly did Ari. Driving this Junior 3 Motorsport. It all kind of went wrong. They carried a bit too much speed into the first half of that double apex right-hander there, and as a result slid wide up into the grey there. Not a lot of grip up there at all, so he did well to keep it under control and really not turn that car around. But Lance Willsey was right there ready to pounce, and through Willsey goes into that car with another Canadian driver, Parker Thompson. Supremely talented is Parker, who has acted on and off as a driver coach for Lance. The opportunity to drive in the most recent round of the championship at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course back in May. And they had a good run going there.
Yeah, Parker Thompson, impressive in anything that he gets in, and just a very personable young man. As now that bright yellow 40 of Keith Grant, Mantella has closed in and is right there, and any slip, Mantella will move to third. He may bring Brian Thenis with him. For Grant, he's just got to focus forward, and he's got a long time to be in this car. So does Mantella. He's going to be doing the drive alone, and 77 of Thenis, he'll hand that car over to Patrick Kiala, as we said earlier. But I think it's a tall ask for a single driver around this racetrack in a race of this length. These drivers are going to be absolutely worn out by the end of it.
I think they are, Brian. And I mean, Lance Willsey he's pretty much an Iron Man. It takes a lot to prize him out of a racing car, but he is sharing that number 14 car with Parker Thompson. He did set the fastest lap of the race at Mid-Ohio. There's some problems towards the end, slipped back a little bit in the order, but he is fast. And but, you know, for Lance, even for Lance to give up, you think that it's not a good idea to do the whole race alone. I would be taking heed of that.
Looking at the times up front, Tonis Kazimitz just over 9 seconds in hand. He's walked away from Memo Gidley, and I think he's kind of settled into a pace now. Gidley right there in the mid-14s, and Kazimitz had been the high 14s, but he just clicked one off down in the mid-114 area. And really, he and Gidley seem to be kind of trading laps back and forth. They're right there in the same area, and I think for Tonis Kazimitz, he's saying, all right, I've got this lead. It doesn't matter how much you lead by in the end. You just need to be in front. Perhaps I need to think about keeping these tires underneath me because I still have a long way to go, 1 hour and 8 minutes.
There is that JDC Motorsports AL Autosport car number 23, Memo Gidley. He's just had his best lap of the race last time around, as you were talking there. This battle continues for third place. Keith Grant really now under pressure from Anthony Mantella. He's going to try and make a pass here coming out of turn 3 through 4 and towards Moss Corner.
Well, I just got a report. I want to say this just in. I want to hear the little telegraph beeping. Keith Grant actually is going to have help, and they will do a driver change. Dakota Dickerson will climb aboard the 40. His first laps in a Ducati. He has not been in this car all weekend long, but I think the JDC Motorsports team or the JDC team looked at this and said, man, that is a lot to ask of Keith Grant, who's in the paddock that we can call on. There's probably no better driver to put in, driver with more experience in an LMP3 type machinery in the paddock here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park than Dakota Dickerson.
And the champion of this series last year as well. You're absolutely right. And spoke to Dakota during the week. He said he was going to be here. He didn't have a drive lined up for this weekend. He passed the Stevens 6 hours in the World Sports Car Championship last weekend. So he said then he's going to come up here and just be there if, in case anybody needed him. So I think that's a really smart call from this team. And even though Dakota, it'll be a right eye-opener for him, as you say, not driven a Ducati before, but is very, very talented and champion in all sorts of different categories over the years as well, including this championship 1 year ago.
Mantella is there, looking out of turn 3, kind of back and forth, and then lost a little bit, but Grant really under pressure, slips a little high, now off of the apex in 5B. Mantella may get a run down the back straightaway. It's Duquesne versus Duquesne, so the same chassis, the same aerodynamics. It just depends on what type of wing setting they have. And Grant is going to make Mantella go around the high side if he can get there into turn 8. Can he get there? Can he stay side by side through the apex of 8? Mantella gets the better of it and leads through 9. Mantella takes the position.
That was a really nice pass and
nicely done.
Yeah, by Anthony Mantella, local driver. Of course, lots of miles around here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in all sorts of different cars, but relishing the opportunity to drive this car. And there is a problem for...
It's the 77. It's Brian Thenis. He'd been running well with that group and came onto the front straightaway and then just suddenly slowed. Got a big downhill area where he can coast here. And now the car seems to be under power again.
Maybe
a control alt delete, and off you go. Thenis back up to speed. You wonder if some type of a glitch in the electrical system. And like I said, a lot of times with these cars, if you'll just reset everything, they'll refire. Perhaps did he hit a switch as he was coming through those final corners, moving his hands maybe on a bump or whatever, but 77 looks good to go at this point, Jeremy.
It seems to be back up to speed there coming through Moss Corner, so that's certainly good news. He remained on the lead. That lost him a lot of time, obviously, to those cars he was contending with. He comes out ahead of, I think that's Tony Arve behind him on the racetrack. But he is at least back and running, and as you say, seems to be back up to speed.
Speaking of up to speed, Tonis Kazimets just has found another gear. It seems like he had been running in the mid 114s, mid to high 114s. This last time by 113, so down into the high 113s. Memo Gidley still at a 14.9, and the gap between first and second has pulled to about 11 seconds. Keith Grant now under attack from the 14. Lance Wilsey just behind him as Mantella got by, and Brian Thenis had his problems in the 77. Wilsey now joins the party.
He does, and Tonis Kazimets a couple of laps ago actually snuck in a 1:13.86. That was the new fastest lap of the race. Been all over the place on lap times. Actually, the last several laps, Tony. So the middle, as you say, a 14.0 last time around. or 13.9 last round, now 14.0. Before that was a 16.1. So he's been up and down a bit, but he's still extending that lead by another second that lap. But Memo Gidley in second place. Anthony Mantello is pulling away from this battle that is now continuing in Keith Grant and Lance Woolsey.
And for Lance Woolsey, hats off. I mean, a great run by him. He's always a great competitor, always great to see him out there. Had some decent finishes this season, but man, he has come to life here in Canada and now really pressuring Keith Grant. And Grant has lost the pace that he had earlier. Jeremy, you talk about lap times. Looking at the lap times that are being turned right now, he's a good second and a half slower than where he was when we started.
Yeah, he is certainly slipping back here. 1 minute 16.8 last time around. That's, as you say, a full second and a half away from his fastest lap of the race. Ahead of him, meanwhile, Anthony Mantella has just had his best lap, 1 minute 14.7 for the third place car, Anthony Mantella.
Well, it's interesting, Jeremy. I was wondering, I thought, well, perhaps it's a Duquesne issue, but it's not, because Anthony Mantella in the same chassis, and Mantella running good, quick, consistent lap times in the mid to high 114s, but Gidley seems to be slowing down a bit aboard the number 23.
Yeah, at least he's within half a second of his best time, though, Gidley, last time around, a 15.1 for him. He turned his best lap just 3 or 4 laps ago. He just doesn't have the pace of Tony Kazimierz at this stage, but look, there's still a long way to go. It's a 90-minute race, and we're just coming up to the half-hour mark. So just over an hour remaining, an hour, 1 minute remaining at the moment. And these cars can do a little bit less than an hour on a tank of fuel. So there is a minimum drive time requirement for each of the drivers. If there are 2 drivers sharing a car, we've got several teams in this race just going solo, but one of them having just changed its mind very recently. But for the 2-driver cars, the driver must drive a minimum of 40 minutes. So it's going to be another 11 minutes before that window will open for them to make the driver change.
Tony Kazimierz continues to lead from Canadian Tire and Motorsport. Park never headed after qualifying his number 60 on pole, Volvo Racing Ligier. And one of the conversations that I had with Tonise earlier was about consistency over a long run. He said, I think we have it. We'll have to wait and see. But Jeremy, that's what I see here for Kazimierz. He's been able to not only be consistent, his lap times seem to have slowly gotten even quicker as the fuel load burns down. That is not what I've seen with the other competitors, while Memo Gidley maybe within a half a second of his quickest lap time. This last time by, it was a half a second slower than his quickest lap time. And for Kazimierz, he went from running mid to high 14 to high 13s to low 14s, and now a problem. That was Steve Scullin, who zipped around and
right in front of Memo Gidley. I mean, directly in front of Memo Gidley. Memo did a great job there to avoid contact. Scullin just had gone a couple of laps down.
Go forward, do I go back?
Yeah, really. That's a scary place to be.
There he goes, leave the hole, leave the hole. Wait for the corner workers to tell you it's safe to move if there's anyone there within your line of sight. It's just scary indeed. Now Scullin back underway, and a problem for the 44 yet again of Tony Ave. Something is not right with the 44, Jeremy, because Tony Ave is not a driver who makes very many mistakes, and we've seen 3 problems already today.
Yeah, he's going to bring that car into the pits, then the car number 44, and clearly not wrong. I think he must have some braking difficulties. Let's have a again, see what happened to Steve Scullin, right ahead of Memo Gidley coming out of the final corner, and just got a bit behind on his steering, basically, didn't he? And around that car goes under power. Yeah, Memo Gidley had to take to the left there onto the grass. Thankfully, there's just about enough room there for him to do that and not make contact. Or did he? No, I don't think he did make contact with the barrier, because it's not far away from the racetrack at that corner. So that was a scary moment for Memo Gidley.
Just super quick reactions by Gidley there. Just
Lance Willsey losing it at turn 5 as well. It's difficult to be consistent around this racetrack.
Tony Skazimitz onto the front straight one more time. Puts another lap in, inside an hour to go.
Yeah, so less than 10 minutes now before the pit stop window opens in terms of making the driver chain. Those that are making driver changes during this race, there were 3 cars that were planning on going solo. Tony Skazimitz is an Ironman himself. He's planning on doing this race solo. Keith Grant has decided that Dakota Dickerson will drive the second stint in that car. So the only other driver that's going solo is Anthony Mantella.
Mantella in really good shape too. He's an athlete. You can tell simply by looking at him. So anyway you look at it though, you and I talked about this, Jeremy, it is a big ask to do the entire race here with one driver. But back to that spin for Steve Scullin. The LMP3 based machinery does have traction control, but a lot of times they turn it way, way down, and a lot of the more experienced drivers will turn it off. And I think that's just really kind of what bit Scullin in the throttle coming off of turn 10, got a little too much power down. The rear end came around and, as you said, just got a little behind on the steering trying to catch up with it, but it really snapped on him. Got a fair amount of horsepower in the back, 450 plus. And I think you try to get that to the ground over some of the bumps. Sometimes you get that little bit of wheel spin and the rear end jumped out. Skazimitz with the big run down through turn 2. The compression at the bottom of the hill. Then you've got to feel your way through turn 3. The exit here, you use every bit of the road. And if you drop a wheel there at the exit, not a very long distance to the tire wall. We've seen that already through the different classes that have run here with IMSA. Then the very treacherous turn 5A and 5B, lost corner. Big elevation changes here. And Jeremy, sometimes they work for you, sometimes they work against you. In that plateau there in turn 5A at the beginning, the first right-hander has bitten several drivers already today.
Yeah, great corner, isn't it? I mean, there's a compression before it in turn 4, the sort of flat out left-hander, and you go up the hill and over a bit of a rise into the first part of turn 5. And then these cars, I think you're braking just about as you turn in to the first of the right-handers. Then it's a heavy brake between those two 90-degree corners and down to the slowest part of the racetrack there at turn 5B. And then off onto the Marangoni straightaway. A lap there in the 13s for Tony Skazimitz, our race leader. So he's not letting up. He's pulling away continuously from Memo Gidley. Pulled away on that last lap by a better part of a second and a half over Gidley, for goodness sake. He is flying, Tony Skazimitz. Meantime, having made that mistake, Lance Willsey in that patriotically liveried car number 14 is closing in again now on Ari Balog. Last lap around was within a couple of tenths of a second of his fastest lap of the race. Anthony Mantella just turned his best lap of the race as he completed his 27th lap.
And for Willsey, after that problem that we saw up in turn 5, like you said, Jeremy, we're really closing down on Balog now. And then it pushes just a little too hard, got a little wide over the hill. Willsey there into turn 2 and lost some of that ground that he had worked so hard to gain.
Yeah.
And that's the nature of this racetrack, isn't it? I mean, you see that competitor in front of you, and you're kind of reeling him in, and one step too many, just a little bit much, and then right there again gets on the curbing drivers left at the turn in for 5B, and you saw the rear end step out. He lost a car length again there. It's a real ebb and flow in this battle.
Yeah, and it is difficult to be consistent here. It's a fast track, and there is a lot of grip on the racing line, but you get off the racing line a little bit. If you made it a little bit wide in the entrance of the corner, you grip very, very quickly indeed. But for Tony's Kazmets, he must realise his pit stop, I think, is coming up perhaps fairly soon. He's going to make that stop, I think, on the early side rather than the later side. They can get to the end from here, and he's just turned another 1:13.9 for our race leader, Tony's Kazmets. That's against the second place car at 1:59, 2 seconds on that last lap gained by Tony's Kazmets.
And just impressive, and that's when we talk about the balance of the car and how well it stays underneath you. And what I've seen so far today with the 60, Jeremy, is that this car gets better as the fuel burns off, and it may be a little bit more of a handful as the tires are going away, but what you get is a lighter car as the fuel burns off. So there's a little bit of trade-off. You might have to work a little bit harder, but the lap time actually gets a little bit quicker because the car is getting lighter throughout the stint.
A new lap record there for Tony's Kazmets.
Oh, there you go.
14.699, just to rub it in. I reckon that pit stop is coming up very, very soon for Tony's Kazmets. If he wants to, the longer he stays out, the risk he runs perhaps of having a full course caution when the pits are closed, and his lead would be diminished. But right now, with the pit stop window's not yet open so for those who have 2 drivers in this race, they can't yet make their first pit stop. But I would think soon after 40 minutes we will see a race leader in the pit lane. This brightly liveried car with the blue and yellow in support of Ukraine, of course. Tony's Kazmets, he's from nearby Estonia. That's a thought that is close to his heart.
Kazmets, Gidley, then Mantella. That's the top 3 from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in round 3 of the IMSA Prototype Challenge. But it has been all about Tony's Kazmets through the first half of today's race. We'll still have a long way to go, but that number 60 Ligier from Wolver Racing, the pilot behind the wheel, they have not had a problem nor put a wheel wrong. We can't say that for everybody, as Memo Gidley now having to deal with some lap traffic at the exit of turn 1. He'll look to the inside at turn 2. Not going to happen there. Memo thinks better of it, and then he'll slide down the inside at the apex and gets it done relatively easily. But as a driver, you know that the car in front of you, turn 2, one of the most challenging corners at this racetrack, Jeremy, and you know that the competitor in front of you needs to focus forward. You don't want to be a part of someone else's problem like Gidley almost was earlier with Steve Scullin. So kind of thinks better of it there and is patient, waits for the gap to open up, and then makes the decisive move down at the bottom of turn 2.
He does, but he's already lost another couple of seconds to Tony's Kazmets, who reset the new lap record on that previous lap, lap 31, 1:13.62 for Tony's Kazmets. The old lap record by Garrett Grist, local driver, 1:13.8 back in 2019. This is the latest generation of cars, of course, we're running now. But Tony's Kazmets, despite absolutely no pressure from in front, is just setting a torrid pace at the front of this field, and absolutely nothing that Memo Gidley at this stage can do about it.
Well, and I think that shows the experience of Memo Gidley. You know that he's getting the most that he can get out of the 23, so he's going to give it all he can. But at the same point in time, if this is your best and it's not matching the car up front, then just keep doing your best. You can't drive the car in front of you. You can't will it back to you. So focus on what you can do. You never know if somebody else is going to have a problem. So maximize your car and what you can do with it, and see if the race might not come back to you. Pit stops now happening.
Yep, the window has opened for driver changes. 40 minutes have elapsed during this race, so pit stops for Steve Scullen, who was the first to come onto pit lane, but he's already a couple of laps down. He car number 46. It's the green and white Fidelity Insurance car. But Brian Thenis also onto pit lane, car number 77, as is Lance Willsey in car number 14.
So 2 races to go once we leave Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in the 2022 season. But 2023, Jeremy, it's going to look very different for the LMP3 cars. Combined next year with GT4 in a sprint format. And that's going to be exciting. No more pit stops. It'll be a sprint format, single driver as the 40 comes in, and Dakota Dickerson will climb behind the wheel.
There goes Parker Thompson leaving the pit lane as the number 40 car comes in. Dakota suited and booted, ready to climb into that number 40 car. It's out of 4th position. The top 3, the only cars have not yet made their first pit, well, what they hope is their only pit stop during this race.
Yeah, you certainly only want to make one, don't you? Because if you're coming for the second time, then there is an issue that you don't want to have to deal with. So right now, the 3 at the marks, Ari Balog, driver change going on there as Courtney Crone, the young Californian, will take over.
Yeah, Courtney is by staying out there now at this stage. When everybody else makes their stops, he's going to be a lap ahead of everybody, because it's a minimum pit stop time of 115 seconds when you refuel these cars, which is what they're also doing, as well as the driver change. So if he stays out now, he's going to be 1, possibly 2 laps clear of everybody at this before he has to make his own pit stop.
And that's something that you just don't see in prototype challenge competition. And granted, there are a number of drivers who did not make the trip to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park for one reason or another. And so the field is not as large as we are used to seeing, but still, that kind of performance is beyond impressive for Tonis Kazimierz as he flashes through turn 1 while other competitors just leaving pit lane.
Yeah, so now just the top 3 cars not yet pitted. Tonis Kazimierz, Memo Gidley and Anthony Mantella. The only cars on the lead lap. The gap from first to second last time around was over 33 seconds. And that lap around by Tonis Kazimierz. So, well, for him, relatively conservative, 1 minute 14.38. And that lap is still faster than anybody else has managed in this race.
Anthony Mantella now onto pit road, and remember, he's going to do the Ironman here, Jeremy. He's going to stay behind the wheel, and another 45 minutes on track await him. He'll have an opportunity to get a drink bottle, a fresh drink bottle, and get a little bit of rest before he heads back. But good battles on the racetrack resuming after the pit stops. There's the 77 working by Patrick Kayala, getting past the number 3. That's Courtney Crone aboard the 3, taking over from Ari Balog, and now Lance Willsey coming to pit road.
Again, that's Parker Thompson,
Yeah.
because that car's already made a pit stop.
It's got to be a penalty.
Is that a penalty?
No. Yes, it is. Yep.
Yeah.
Down to the penalty box.
Stop and go. Has he stalled it? Yeah, he's got it going again.
So not sure what the penalty was. It's not on the bottom of my timing screen,
no.
But served. And anytime you got to come down pit road, it's a long drive down pit road here. But then when you have to stop down in the penalty box, it adds a little insult to injury, and then you can head back out on the racetrack. But obviously something on that pit stop that the officials did not like, hence the penalty. Alexander Kariba climbing behind the wheel of the 23 now, taking that over from Memo Gidley. His parents here this weekend, Kariba's parents, and they were looking for some seating earlier, Jeremy. Not sure they found the seating that they wanted. As the driver change going on, Kariba slides in, and I know his seat will fit, but for his parents who went into town to one of the outdoor stores to find some chairs to watch the race on here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, he had not been here before, neither had they. Maybe they got the metric system messed up a little bit, because they went and they bought chairs, Jeremy, and they got to the racetrack and they weren't the right size, were they?
Not quite, no. A little bit smaller than anticipated. Kiddie chairs they had managed to purchase. So, yeah. Just about, you can make them fit, right?
Yeah, if you ever saw the movie Elf, that's what it looked like. That is a taller guy to begin with, but they unfolded these chairs. He was saying his parents were like, wow, they're very small and light. They're so easy to carry. This is great. They got to where they wanted to sit, took them out of the bag and went, well, no wonder they're so small and light. They're literally kids' chairs.
Yeah, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? Hey, so that was a number 14 car was a penalty. Short pit stop, 115 seconds is the minimum pit stop time. There's a little bit of leeway there, but he outstripped the leeway, and as a result of that, he has to serve a drive-through penalty plus a half a second. It's really for Parker Thompson. So he's had to come in again and resume the race. So that's cost him a lot of ground for Parker. He's going to now have to charge to make it up.
You know, they say, Jeremy, that champions can drive anything, and I think you're seeing that right now as the battle is beginning to heat up between the bright yellow 40 and the 77. Dakota Dickerson now behind the wheel of that Duquesne chassis that we saw Keith Grant start, and then Patrick Kiala behind the wheel now of the 77, taking over for Brian Thenis. And Dickerson never turned a wheel this weekend and has never turned a wheel aboard a Duquesne chassis. And right now, I think he's got probably 2 or 3 laps in here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park behind the wheel of the 40, down into the low 13s, 13.4 that last time around.
Yeah, that's a
yeah, it is.
And Parker Thompson's got even faster, 13.193.
Wow.
So he just reset the fastest lap of the race. That's the good news. The bad news is he's a couple of laps down, I think, after that stop and go penalty. But of course, Tony's Kazmet's still to make his pit stop.
So all of this will change, at least lap time wise, for Kazmets when he pits, and expect good battles on the racetrack. You see the great one right now between Dakota Dickerson aboard the yellow number 40 and the red, white, and blue of Kiala in the 77, and a problem for Alexander Kariba. That's out of turn 10 onto the front straightaway, where Memo Gidley had the near miss a little earlier when Steve Scullin spun. And I think it might be the same type of problem for Kariba, perhaps getting the left side tires up and over the red and white curbing and into the grass. I think that's probably what turned him around. I don't see any damage to the side of the 23. Gets it backed up just enough to clear the wall. You don't want to back too far out on the racetrack because you know other traffic will be coming around the corner. Now Kariba underway as the 14 flashes by.
Yeah, so that's very costly there for Kariba. This was his outlet, first, the completion of his first lap. Just got a bit of a slide on halfway through the corner, corrected the car, and it ran over the curbing, over the grass, and he lost control at that point. So the good news is, I don't think he hit anything. It was a bit close, but I think he got away without any damage to that car, but it certainly cost him a lot of ground.
Yes, indeed it did. It moved him well back in the order, and Kariba now underway, but I think, Jeremy, a little off of the apex there for Kariba, and then, as you said, the car gets on the bumps, tail steps out, he adds that counter steering and catches it, but the combination of being a little off the apex and that slide that put him out about a half a car width well, it was a half a car width too much, and gets out there in the grass. And these Michelin tires provide the drivers in all the IMSA series tremendous grip as long as you're on the asphalt. As soon as it gets to the grass and the dirt, all bets are off.
Yeah, keep it on the black bit. That's the advice here for anybody on this racetrack. It's a very unforgiving track at the best of times. You really don't want to make a mistake here. And when you do go off, if and when you do go off, you're lucky not to hit anything. That's certainly the case there for Alexander Kariba.
Patrick Kiala aboard the 77, still trying to match the lap times of Dakota Dickerson, and there's some ebb and flow, and there's going to be a little bit more of it as Dickerson now in third. He can see Anthony Mantella in front of him in the 17, the black and green number 17, just going in to turn 8 now, and then the battle raging just behind Mantella, and it's moving forward. Mantella at a 16.8 the last time by. Dakota Dickerson, Patrick Kiala down about 14 flat, so they are on a charge. And for Dakota Dickerson, you talked about it, Jeremy, a former champion, the champion last year in this category. Patrick Kiala drives anything quickly, and both of those drivers have a lot more experience, and certainly even more recent experience than Anthony Mantella. Mantella out of a car for a couple of years until he rediscovered, or should I say discovered, this LMP3 category and just fell in love with it. It was enough to bring him back to the racetrack and run the entire Prototype Challenge Series this year, and he is having a ball, but it's going to be a big ask to have him stay in front of these two more experienced drivers, more current drivers that are beginning to charge down on him.
Yeah, they've still got a bit of ground to make up on him, and yeah, they've made up a few tenths of a second over each of the last 2 laps. But Anthony, I mean, what a job he is doing there, and he's also going to be driving in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship race later on this afternoon as well. So that's a busy day of driving. But look, these cars are kind of addictive, aren't they? I mean, motor racing, you can argue, is addictive. But when Lance Wilsey bought one of these cars initially, just as a track day, just to have some fun and go drive cars, because the cars are pretty bulletproof. You come in and run them. And he ended up buying not 1 but 2 cars, so that when he got up, when one of them needed refueling, he hopped in the other one and drove that one during test days. But the plan originally for Lance Wilsey was just to get some extra seat time in preparation for GTD. Running the GT3 cars, the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, but he had so much fun in this prototype. He said, "Hey, let's go drive one of these more regularly."
So Mantella obviously caught in traffic on that 1 minute and 16-second lap. He's back down to 1:14.8, but Bill Dickerson and Kiala behind him consistently a second faster per lap, and they have closed the gap considerably with 35 minutes to go. Certainly this battle will get to Anthony Mantella, but any way you look at it for Mantella, a great run here. We've seen some heady driving on his part, so he is having a great day. And anytime you're racing close to home in front of your friends and family on a racetrack that you know well, and certainly with the weather as good as it is here this weekend, it's a good day.
It certainly is. A couple of personal lap times there turned by Alex Kariba, a 1:14.2. And the car is now running, of course, down in the 7th position after that spin at the exit of turn 10. But Parker Thompson had reset the fastest lap of the race, 1 minute 13.02. The Canadian from Red Deer, Alberta, is Parker Thompson. Is now closed up onto the tail of Courtney Crone.
Courtney Crone, one of those young drivers who's driven just about everything as well. Time and vintage cars. A lot of time now developing her skills here in LMP3 machinery. And a lot of people believe that she's got the talent to move forward. She just needs the opportunities and the experience. She's getting it now. And for Parker Thompson, he's trying to get a run. And you look at these two cars, both of them Ligier chassis. We'll see what kind of a draft Thompson can get and whether he can make the move on Crone down at the end of the back straightaway in turn 8. And there it is. Decisive move, pounces there at the end. And for Courtney Crone, she's got a great rabbit in front of her now. Study what you see going on and continue to try to hang on to Parker Thompson. See that his experience, a lot of experience in GT cars, and experience rolling the speed through the apex. Courtney will see that and she'll go, okay, I get it. What can I do with that? And take that lesson, try to apply what you can apply now, and then apply it the next time that you're back behind the wheel of one of these LMP3 cars at VIR.
That's exactly right. And for Courtney, she's not quite yet got down to the pace that Ari Balog was doing in that car in the first stint. So this is a wonderful opportunity for her to really learn from one of the best young drivers around at the moment. Parker Thompson is 20 years of age. Was a star, has been a star on the road to Indy for a number of years, both in the first and formative steps of that ladder, the USF 2000 and Indy Pro 2000, finishing in the top 3 in the championship in both of them. And this year, of course, the last couple of years, been running in the Porsche Carrera Cup North America, currently stands second in that championship as well at the midway point in the season. So hugely experienced, massively talented, good opportunity for Courtney to learn.
Dakota Dickerson dragging Patrick Kiala with him right up to the rear wing of Anthony Mantella. They are there now. Time to cue the Jaws music, because Dakota Dickerson, at this distance, Jeremy, you're far enough away that you don't have the opportunity to make a move, but you're close enough that you can study the competitor in front of you. And I guarantee you that's exactly what Dakota Dickerson has done. He's had the last lap or so, and he'll have another one most likely to kind of get an idea of where it is that Anthony Mantella likes to place that AWA number 17 Duquesne. And when he gets there, there'll be time to make the move. What he'd really like to do, Jeremy, is try to get Mantella in a place that he can place Mantella between himself and Patrick Kiala right behind him, and Dickerson goes around.
Yeah, he was thinking the same thing, I think.
I think you're right. I think he was thinking, I need to get a big run. That's the third spin we've seen in turn 10, all the same way, trying to get the power down early, and there's a little bump there. You're just not right on top of the car. Needs to upset the back end, and around you go.
Yeah, first time in a Duquesne for Parker Thompson. Let's have a look, see what happened here. Just on the turn into the corners when he lost it.
Yeah, I think he just tried to roll big speed. He knew he had Kiala right behind him. He wanted to get the big run and just could not get it done. He is going to be seriously disappointed if there is someone in the field who obviously takes this very seriously. It's Dakota Dickerson, and no one harder on himself than himself, and he's going to be frustrated with that performance as the 60 now heads to pit road.
I was just about to say, we're almost at the 1 hour mark in this race, and Tony Skazmets has set out on his side. We've got 2 laps in hand over everybody else. He'll lose, well over a lap for making this pit stop, of course, but he's still going to have a pretty handy lead over Anthony Mantella, who's in second place. But he's going to be able to, I think, lead potentially every lap of this race, which has not been done in this championship before. Volvo Racing team goes to work on changing the tyres, puts the fuel in. Tony Skazmets just got to be patient for the next 115 seconds.
Patrick Kiala not being very patient. It's Dakota Dickerson's out of the way. He's wasted no time getting right there to the back wing of Anthony Mantella to see what Kiala learned in watching the cars ahead of him, where he decided that he'll try to get a run on Mantella. He got a good run off of Moss Corner and may close a bit down the straightaway. Combination, great run, big draft, looks to the inside, nothing doing there, but he certainly wants Mantella to think about it, to know that he's there. That's part of the game. Through turn 10, where Dickerson had the problem, they've got a lap car just in front. they'll have to work around, as sitting for 115, well, you're not sitting for the entire 115 seconds. For the amount of time that you've got to sit there, Jeremy, though, it's got to feel like an eternity.
Yeah. Particularly for someone like Tony Kazmets, who's been around the sport a long time. There was,
look at this!
Making the move up into turn 3. Not quite close enough. Discretion, the better part of valor there for Patrick Kuyala.
He had looked down the inside going into turn 3 as Mantella had to check up a little bit for the lap car, and Kuyala thought about it, and I think if he had waited another tenth or two of a second to back out, it could have been disastrous. Carl, a little squirrely under braking. He's on the brake so hard because he realizes that Mantella doesn't know that he's there, or doesn't care that he's there, that he's going to the apex. And for Patrick Kuyala, he had to get out. I'm impressed right now with Anthony Mantella, not only the pace that he's run throughout the weekend. As we said, he's really taken a liking to these LMP3 cars, but he's got massive pressure from behind, and he's not put a wheel wrong.
It's been absolutely, well, yes, he has driven absolutely beautifully to this point in the race, because Patrick Kuyala, as you say, a huge amount of experience in all sorts of different cars over the years. Former champion in Lamborghini Super Trofeo in Europe, looking to win the championship this season for this O'Gara Motorsport Change Racing US Racetronics conglomerate, with which he has shared this car with Brian Thenis this afternoon. Tony Kazmets then is back out onto the racetrack. He's still got, I think, one lap in hand over everybody at this stage.
Good battle here is Alexander Kariba trying to make amends for his problem that he had a little earlier on, Jeremy. Now up to the rear wing of Courtney Crone.
Yeah, he's caught her pretty quickly here, and Parker Thompson's already put a lot of day ground in between himself and Courtney Crone. In fact, after the spin, Dakota Dixon was rejoined in between them as well. There goes that finally, that move for Patrick Kuyala, so now up into second position.
You know what, Jeremy, I look at that, and what that is experience. Experience with aerodynamics and understanding high-speed corner entry, and that's all that was for Patrick Kuyala. He understood, he turned in, maintained that speed, he maintained the downforce, sneak inside Anthony Mantella and got the job done. But for Anthony Mantella, he has done a great job today. Now Kuyala set his sights forward, but he has got a long way to go to catch Tony Kazmets. Looking to the inside of the number 3 down into turn 2, and that is a place where everything's got to be just right in order to get the job done. A lot of times you can force the other car to maybe make a mistake. And speaking of a mistake, now the 46 off, Danny Vermael. I don't know if that was tire smoke. I believe it may have been, and I don't know if the wheels were locked up.
He had some issues. He'd been back in the pits, I think, to make a second stop a little while ago. Whoa, that's a...
Yeah, that's not right, yeah.
No, that's a braking problem there for Danny Vermael, no question about it.
I mean, it looked to me like the right rear was all locked up. And Danny Vermael in the car, on the radio, I believe, with the team, and you could tell how animated he was about the problem that he just had at the entry to turn 5, that braking area. The question is, will they be able to move that car? And the answer is right there, no. Full course caution with 24 minutes to go.
Right, and after that pit stop, by the way, by the time he got out of the pits, made that mandatory stop and got back up to speed, Tony Kazmets was a lap ahead of everybody, but he is a lap ahead there of Dakota Dickerson. So the top 5 cars are going to be on the lead lap, and for Dickerson there, really disappointing for him to be stuck behind Tony Kazmets, because he would have been, he much prefers to be not on the lead lap. But there is the car of Danny Vermael nosed into the tire wall there at turn 5. Yeah, that's a major problem. Did the gearbox lock up or something locked up on that car? You said they had gearbox problems in qualifying. I wonder whether that was just something at the back end locking up there, Brian.
Well, definitely the right rear is locked before the right front locks. You can see the smoke trailing off the rear tire before you could see it off of the front tire. I couldn't tell if the left rear was locked, but certainly something, let's see, look to our right is left. I think there's smoke off both rear tires, Jeremy, which would indicate some type of a problem. And you mentioned it. We talked earlier about a gearbox issue on the 46 earlier, and that may be the issue.
I think so, quite likely, because he's done a good job to keep that car from nosing into the barriers there, because that's a very high speed section of track. You come down the hill there through that compression up the hill towards turn 5, and you're going super fast down there, well over 150 miles an hour. And to have any sort of a failure at that point on the racetrack, well, any racetrack, is good, but there perhaps more than quite a few other places.
There's another look at it. You'll see the smoke from both sides in the rear, and then a little lockup from the front. And it takes a driver of Danny Formal's experience to realize if the rear tires are locked up and I turn the wheel, the old adage is the sliding tire always wants to lead the car. So if the rears are locked up and he adds any steering angle at all, the rear is going to go to where the front is, and that's not the way you want to enter turn 5. So as hard as it may be, he did a great job. He kept the wheel straight, got the car slowed down in time before it got to the wall. And as the way they're standing there looking at it, all the safety guys from the AMR Rapid Response Team are looking at it. Even Danny Formal looking at it, there's got to be a problem with the 46.
Yeah, so major disappointment there for Danny, but again, just more good experience for him. He's, I think he had I'm pretty sure he had a second pit stop. Yeah, he did have a second pit stop. Not sure what that was for, but
so here's the issue, but forget Danny Formal for just a second. Look back up the racetrack. That was the leader. That was Tony's Kazimits, and Kazimits saw the smoke. And if you get a chance to look at that one more time, you'll see Kazimits gets all out of shape where that goes wrong. So I don't know if perhaps there was some fluid that was put down as well when Danny Formal had that problem. But at the top of the shot, watch the bright orange car. Take your eyes off the green and white, focus on the bright orange car, big compression right here, and you'll see Kazimits all out of shape, right, left, gathers it back up. But for Kazimits, he dodged a bullet.
Yeah, that's probably the closest call he's had all day, actually. And apart from lapping cars, that's the closest he's been to another car all day. Just dominant performance by the man originally from Estonia, makes his home now in Mundelein, Illinois, northern Illinois, just close to the border with Wisconsin. And for the Costa Rican Danny Formal, again, disappointment for that team, but the good news is that no damage to that number 46, the CT Motorsports Duquesne.
Well, I think about what Kazimits must have been going through there as the crew works to try to wrest the front end of the 46 around without doing damage to it, because I'm not sure how well it's going to roll.
I think the back end locked up on that car, I really do.
Yeah.
Or so, I think you talked about Kazimits getting out of shape there.
Oh, it was.
Fluids came out, a lot of fluids came out of that car, I think.
If you can see it with a camera shot like that, it was a lot more than that if it had been in better focus and the camera had been trained on him. But and it's one of those things where you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. For Tony's Kazimits, he's down in the middle of a compression where the car is just being crushed into the racetrack because of the compression. He's got steering loads in the car. And he looks up ahead and sees smoke, and there may have been fluid on the racetrack or maybe not, but he needed to get out of the throttle a little earlier than he would have liked to. And when you do that, it just moves even more weight to the front end that's already compressed in the racetrack. The front's going to stick really well, and the rear end is going to want to get loose. And that's exactly what we saw as the back end of that Ligier danced back and forth as Kazimits trying to slow for the problem that was in front of him. that he didn't really know what it was. He didn't know if it was an engine or oil or what have you. So a bullet dodge for Kazimierz, as they're going to have to try to struggle to get the 46 to a place that they can get it probably drug up on a flatbed, I would think, Jeremy.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it's going to be it's going to take quite a while to sort that out. We've got less than 20 minutes remaining in this race. Tony Kazimierz, and his lead is almost completely evaporated. The good news for Kazimierz is that the car behind him is a lapped car. That's Dakota Dickerson. The car behind Dakota Dickerson is a lapped car. That is Courtney Crone. The car behind Courtney is also a lapped car. It's Alexander Kariba. So the good news is he's got 3 cars that are 1 lap down between himself and the second place car in this race. That's Patrick Kuyala in car number 77. Behind Kuyala is Anthony Mantella and Parker Thompson. And if they can clear this lapped traffic, which probably won't be that easy, then perhaps they can have an opportunity to chase after Tony Kazimierz.
And certainly the radio is going to be playing in Kazimirz's ear. No, not with music, but the crew saying, on this restart, here's what you've got behind you. You've got 3 lapped cars. These are the colors of the cars, so that he'll know, if with just a quick glance, that if it's a yellow car, it doesn't matter. If it's a white car, it doesn't matter. It's the red, white, and blue car or back that's the first one that really matters for position. Right there, the 77.
Yeah, and then right behind the 77 are the 2 Canadians. Anthony Mantella in car number 17 and Parker Thompson in car number 14. It is Thompson who has set the fastest lap of the race. He went faster again, actually, down into the 12s, 112.940 for Parker Thompson, which he just did 4 or 5 laps before this full course caution.
I saw that 12.9 pop up on the board for Parker Thompson a little bit earlier and thought, wow, what an impressive time. We had seen some mid to low 13s, but then Thompson taking another half a second off of those lap times just shows the ability of that young driver, and shows that he also has a very good car underneath him there. The 14 of Lance Wilsey, Sean Creech Motorsports, and Sean Creech Motorsports, a lot of experience with LMP3-based machine, and it's certainly showing here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
It is, yeah, and during a race to be sent lap times like that, it is impressive. The fastest lap in qualifying, Tony's Kazimierz, was a 112.745, so not got down to those lap times yet, but still, it has been a really good effort here for Tony Kazimierz. I mean, you talked about the radio not playing music. Probably could have been playing music up until now, but at this stage, the pit stop, he needed certainly to listen to the crew, and right now he'll be paying attention to the safety car in front of him, and when that car pulls off, then he'll be focused forward and make sure he just doesn't give any opportunity. Dakota Dickerson, I'm sure, would love to get his lap back, get back onto that lead lap in case there was another caution in the very much closing stages of this race. But Dakota getting used to this car, it's not going to be the work of a moment. So he's a pretty sensible guy. I don't think he certainly isn't going to do anything silly. His best lap, by the way, in that car, Dakota, was a 1:13.4, which is actually quicker than Kazimierz's fastest lap of the race. So very impressive, having never driven the chicane before for Dakota Dickerson. Maybe Kazimierz is going to have to look over his shoulder in his mirrors at the restart.
Well, yeah, you would think Dickerson would want to get his lap back. He's Kazimierz with those 3 lap cars behind him, and one of them was the 23 Alexander Kariba. We talked about the problems that he had. They're second in the championship, he and Memo Gidley. Remember the chairs? Well, there's the chairs. There's Alexander's dad. Yes, he sat in one of those chairs. There's another picture of him from behind, and that it's the movie Elf. It just is when you see it sitting from behind. But those are the chairs that Alexander Kariba's family has to sit in to watch him here this weekend.
Gary and Kim, they're from Branson, Missouri, so making a trip north of the border here for for, well, the Canada Day and July 4th holiday. Great opportunity to come up here. What a wonderful racetrack to visit on a holiday weekend.
You think they'll take the chairs back to Missouri? We have to declare those? I mean, I don't know. What do you do with them? It looks like the 46 has been rolled up on the flatbed, lights out on the safety car. So I'm thinking we're going to go back to racing here at CTMP this lap. Corvette safety vehicle should be pulling away for the green as he comes onto the front straightaway. Yeah, and so what will those 3 lap cars do? Will they make it easy for Patrick Kiala to get by and take the fight to Kazimierz? Or are they going to try to get past Kazimierz and get back on the lead lap, Jeremy?
Oh, yeah. So just over 30, or just around about 13 minutes to go in this race. 56 laps completed by a leader. Dakota Dickerson answers that question by pulling alongside Tony's Kazimierz heading into turn 1.
And there's Dakota Dickerson. That answered our question pretty quickly, didn't it? Yeah. Not letting any grass grow underneath his feet. The green flag flew, and he was on a charge. So is Patrick Kiala, looking down inside the number 3 at the apex of 2. Courtney Crone staying strong, fighting hard, and she's not letting Patrick Kiala get by, and that is not going to make him happy. He'll have the inside line down into turn 4. But Courtney Crone playing tough.
Yeah, she was. And she made an opportunist move down turn 1 as well. Yeah, she's certainly fighting hard in that number 3 car for Junior 3 Racing. But Dakota Dickerson back on the lead lap. That's certainly the good news for him. And Tony's Kazimierz happy to let him go at that stage. I mean, even if there is another full course caution, Dakota Dickerson, even though he's back on the lead lap, is going to be at the tail of that train of cars. So I don't think he's really going to pressure Tony's Kazimierz in the late stages in any case. So let him go and focus on keeping those other cars behind him. Alex Kariba, then, who is in second or third position on the road, because the first car is at the tail end of the lead lap, and then that battle for second and third with Thompson and Kiala.
What a great move by Thompson. I'm not exactly sure where he got past Kiala, but that was a tall order, and Kiala wants the position back as they're now charging forward, trying to get past Alexander Kariba just in front. Kariba lap down. They want to see if they can take this fight up to Tony's Kazimierz, the second of the cars in the order through turn 5. The bright yellow number 40, Dakota Dickerson, is the last car on the lead lap. The leader overall, the bright orange number 60 of Tony's Kazimierz.
Yeah, and he's going to make a move here on to put Dickerson back down again 1 lap. Not a good exit from the Moss hairpin there to go to Dickerson. That's enabled Kazimierz to get the drag up the Marandraghi straight and make the pass cleanly before turn 8. So back now to just 4 cars once again on the lead lap.
Well, nice move by Dickerson to just say, hey, I didn't get the run. He didn't fight particularly hard. He knows the position that he's in on the racetrack. He knows what he would like to see a competitor do if he were in Parker Thompson's or Patrick Kiala's shoes. Dickerson lets them go. And now Thompson has clear sailing.
Dakota Dickerson, he's coming under pressure now. That is for position behind him. That is Alexander Kariba, who was right behind Dickerson. But the yellow car Dickerson, the white and black car of Kariba, number 40 and 23, as they head up into turn 5. So Dakota Dickerson, having let those race leaders go past, he's certainly not going to want to lose another position because this is a battle for 5th position, 1 lap off the ultimate pace.
Yeah, he's not going to let Kariba go. I think he did the right thing by letting Thompson and Kiala through. because he knew where he stood in the fight, and the leader had already gotten back by him. So, again, it just shows the professionalism that Dakota Dickerson has, knowing the situation that he's in and letting these guys have at it. Speaking of have at it, Parker Thompson focused forward. He's been able to put just a little bit of breathing room between himself and Patrick Kiala, and he has his sights set firmly on Tonis Kazimierz. Catching the 60 is one thing, getting by him in the next 8 minutes and 55 seconds is something else.
It is indeed, but he's certainly going to go for it, is Parker Thompson, no question about that. Last time around for a race leader, 1 minute 14.52 for Tonis Kazimierz. His best lap of the race is at 1:13.6. Parker Thompson's best lap of the race at 1:12.9. Of course, the tyres were a lot fresher when he set that time, but he's not only trying to make a move for the lead potentially, but also he's going to watch his mirrors, because Patrick Kiala is right there in car number 77.
Ligier in front, in the hands of Tonis Kazimierz, that bright orange number 60. And then you look back to Parker Thompson in the 14, another Ligier, and the 77 of Kujala, another Ligier. So it's Ligier's 1, 2, 3. They're all driving the same equipment. They should all have similar handling characteristics. Obviously, underneath them, you can work shocks and springs and sway bar settings, but the same aerodynamic signature. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, a lot of fun here for Tonis Kazimierz, and finally he's got some work to do here. Good consistent laps there. 1 minute 14.1 for Tonis Kazimierz. He was about a 10.5 quicker than Parker Thompson on that last lap. The time is ticking away inside now, 7.5 minutes remaining.
You got to think that Parker Thompson and Patrick Kiala are a little fresher than Tonis Kazimierz. Remember, Kazimierz doing this solo, and Thompson and Kiala are both second drivers, but man, the 60 seems to come off of Moss Corner better than any of the first 3 cars in the serial.
Because he's worked really hard on getting that car to his liking as Tonis Kazimierz, and he's been given this opportunity to drive the car for the rest of the season by his former co-driver Bruce Hamilton, with whom he won the first race of the season at Daytona. And Tonis wasn't sure whether he was going to be able to continue the season, but Bruce has stepped up to the plate, made it possible for Tonis, and he's leading the championship coming into this weekend with the second place finish last time out at Mid-Ohio to go with that victory at Daytona, and he's looking to repay that faith shown in him by winning this race as well from the front.
So Kazimierz answers back with a 13.7 that last time by, 13.9 for Parker Thompson, and a 14 flat for Patrick Kiala. And digging deep is Kazimierz. This is where the 60 seems to be so strong. The exit of the second right-hander, 5B, Moss Corner, onto the straight, and that's where the 60 just seems to jump, Jeremy.
Really does. He's just got that car dialed in so well. I mean, Tonis, he's spent a long time. He's a student of the sport. He's run cars himself in all sorts of different categories over the years. He's also, as I said before, a major part of Pabst Racing's effort in the Road to Indy feeder series towards the NTT IndyCar series. And he might not engineer the cars, but he certainly is very, very close to how those cars are set up and what needs to be improved a car to make it go faster. And he's doing a fantastic job at the moment. For the first time since the restart, that gap back to Parker Thompson is now over a second.
13.7 for Kazimierz, 13.8, almost 13.9 for Thompson. So like you said, the gap now over a second. And Jeremy, perhaps that is the advantage of being a single driver entry, is that the car is set up for you and you alone. So any little quirks that you like, you get to keep. You don't have to share. You don't have to compromise. And that may be the difference in what we're seeing right now between Kazimierz, Thompson, and Kujala.
Yeah, good point, because he's just inching away, just 2 super consistent laps within, what, 5 hundredths of a second of each other last time around for the last 2 laps for Tonis Kazimierz. And he's just inching away from Parker Thompson. It's going to be 4.5 minutes remaining as they cross the line. So that's probably going to be just 4 more laps from here. 3 more laps possibly. Yeah, 3 laps probably.
Through turn 1.
That is his best lap of the race last time around for Tony Skazmits, 13.49. Time to do it, isn't it?
Through turn 3, down the hill at the exit of 3 to turn 4, the big compression down at the bottom of this left-hand corner for Kazmits. And as you said, just a few more laps. And this 1 hour and 30-minute race will be in the books, the 3rd of 5 on the 2022 season. Mentioned earlier, moving to a sprint race format in 2023, the IMSA VP Racing Sports Car Challenge, which will feature LMP3 and GT4 cars. So kind of the end of an era. And Tony Kazmits, you always want to win whatever championship you're in, but if the championship is changing and moving to another format, you want to be that last name in the record books. And the drive we've seen Kazmits put in here and his Wolver Racing team, the ability to place a car underneath him, may very well bring him his 2nd victory of the season. I will not give it to him yet, not by any stretch of the imagination, but just under 3 minutes to go.
And faster again. This is textbook driving by Tony Skazmits. 1 minute 13.423 for the 2nd lap in a row. His best laps of the race, right when it matters, the closing stages. Extended that lead now to Parker Thompson to 1.6 seconds. This is a wonderful performance by Tony Skazmits.
A driver who has driven literally everything, and another one of those drivers that a lot of people look at and you see the performance that he's putting in today and go, why did he not ever get a better shot than he did? And he had shots and opportunities from time to time, but they never seemed to really stick at the higher levels of the sport. And when you look at his talent, you think a lot of team owners, I think, missed something along the way, because Tony Kazmits showing today exactly what he is known for, and that is heady drives, a steel will and determination, and the ability and willingness to commit to some of these high-speed corners. And I would say probably the ability to communicate with his crew, because if you don't have the car underneath you, Jeremy, you can't commit. You can't find that trust in the machine that you're in, and it's up to your engineer and your crew to give you that. And that's why this is a team sport. And for Tony Kazmits, he gets to highlight just what this Wolver Racing team can do.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't come from money. He's worked super hard to make any opportunities he's had over the years. This opportunity came about because he coached Bruce Hamilton for a number of years. Bruce ran in the Atlantic Series, in which Tony Kazmits himself in the Pro Atlantic Series finished 2nd. That was a long time ago now. That was back in 2005. The following year, he made 5 starts in what was then the Champ Car World Series. Again, it was kind of a wing and a prayer, and the budget wasn't there to keep Tony's in that car, but never given up. He fell in love with the sport at a young age, moved to Mundelein, Illinois as a youngster. There is a white flag, so just 1 lap to go for Tony Kazmits.
How frustrating, Jeremy, for Parker Thompson and Patrick Kiyala, because they had to feel like that yellow was what they needed. They were there. They had the lap times. It looked like they had the car to do battle with Kazmits. And for both Thompson and Kiyala, they got great restarts, especially Parker Thompson getting around Kiyala and up to 2nd place. And you thought they've got a really good shot at this. But for Tony Kazmits, it's almost like he looked in his mirror and said, well, you guys have a good time. I'm checking out. And that's exactly what he's done, slowly and steadily, a 10th or 2 at a time.
Yeah, been just a really impressive performance. I mean, he's eased off just a little bit on the last lap. Parker Thompson's a lot closer now than he was for the last couple of laps. Just 3 corners to go now for Tony Kazmits to have win number 2 on the season, along with a 2nd place finish as well. Not quite perfect, but close to it.
Some of the lowest horsepower cars in sports car racing and the highest. Tony Kazimierz, win number 2 on the 2022 calendar for IMSA Prototype Challenge. Came in to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park with the championship lead, and he'll add 350 more points to that. Parker Thompson, a wave as he goes by. Not for the lack of trying there for Thompson or Patrick Kiyala in the 77, who rolls across the line in third, but what a heady drive by Tony Kazimierz.
Yeah, just a tremendous performance by him to win this race. And it was, yeah, just didn't put a wheel wrong all the way through, did he? And when the pressure was on in the closing stages, he stepped up and delivered. It's an Ironman performance, and it's a pretty warm day here. These cars are physically demanding, but Tony Kazimierz is a doughty performer, and that was a great drive. Really under pressure towards the end, dealt with that pressure expertly.
Well, and we always talk about Canadian Tire Motorsport Park and what a track it is that it demands so much commitment from the drivers, but oddly enough, the problems that we saw today were predominantly in the slowest corner on the racetrack, and that was turn 5. We saw Tony Abe with problems up there. We saw other drivers with issues in turn 5, getting high to the outside, losing track positions, but we saw another great race, and the championship points don't change in the number 1 spot, but they will in number 2, I believe, Jeremy.
I think there'll be a tie now, unofficially, for second position, with Memo Gidley and Alexander Kariba on 900 points to the 1,020 for Tony Kazimierz. And with that 6th place finish today for Anthony Kariba and Memo Gidley, they'll be tied on 900 as well, with Brian Thenis and Patrick Kuyala.
So that great run by Kuyala is going to help them in the points into the tie in second, as Jeremy said. Canada with the points lead. For Jeremy Shaw, I'm Brian Tell. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time from VIR.